Hello everyone, I'm Arnaldo, and in this very quick video I am going to talk about equals method. So hopefully this helps you. If you're in Comp Sci 228 at Iowa State, you're very likely going to need this for the second and maybe the third assignment. So hopefully this helps you with it. So okay, before I start, let's think about this, right? So what is the difference between equals equals and dot equals? So if you think, hopefully you think equals equals is to check primitive types and dot equals is to check object equality. And what that means really is primitive types, that could be ints, that could be chars, that could be, I don't know, booleans, bytes, right? In order to compare two of them, all you have to do is equals equals. But if on the other hand you have an object, let's say a string or possibly an array, or actually an array may or may not work, but just think of it as an object. You have to use dot equals. Otherwise, if you do equals equals, it'll check the memory address. It won't check the contents. So when should dot equals be used? Anytime you're comparing objects, of course. Does dot equals always work? And this is kind of an important question. Actually a pretty important question, and the answer is no. It only works if the object had the same, so if the object has overwritten the dot equals method, because so every object in Java extends from object. An object does implement dot equals, but object really all it does is checks the memory address, right? So dot equals will work on any object, but it may or may not be accurate, right? And that's the thing I was thinking about when I said arrays may or may not work. I don't believe it will, but I can't remember. I think if it's primitive type arrays, it will work. I mean, I guess I would have to look it up, but this is the reason why. I don't know if it has overwritten that, right? So when should it be overwritten? So anytime you're creating a new class and would like to give your class that functionality. So if you have a class and you know that you may need to compare the objects, actually just check if things are equal, then you probably want to implement it. So it's actually pretty straightforward, but it's pretty important, and it's important for the exam. If, again, you're in Comp Sci 228 and you, I guess, want to do well in the exam, this is probably an important thing, and really you just have to memorize the steps. It's really simple. It's really that simple. So I mean, what are the steps, right? So the very first thing is you need to ensure that whatever object you were given, and I'll show you some code, so don't worry too much. Whatever object you were given is not null. That's the very first thing you need to do. And actually, I'll show you code because that'll probably work better. I'll tell you and then I'll show you. So let's look at the equals method, and I'll just show you really fast. I have this camera class that I created, and it has a model, and that's just a number, an int, and number of settings, that's also an int, and a brand, right, and that's just a string. We do have an equals method, and I have overridden that from object, and like I said in this slide, right, the very first thing you need to do is ensure that it's not null. And that's what I'm doing here, right? I'm receiving an object, obj, and the very first thing I do is let's make sure it's not null. Okay. The second thing is let's make sure that this object is equal to that object that I was given, right? I guess the type, right? Let's make sure that they're of the same type, and it is as simple as calling this.get class. So I'm saying if this.get class does not equal obj.get class, right, then return false. That's the second thing I need to do. And the third thing would be if both of the above are true, then I downcast the object to this class. And this is something I've had questions about, and I know it may be confusing, but if you think about it, and I'll show you how this is implemented, because you're overriding it, you must. So you have to keep the same signature. And what I mean by the same signature is I have to say public boolean equals and then object obj, because that's how object has implemented it. And that way I can compare different types of objects no matter what they think they are due to polymorphism, right? So I'm getting an object, and my I guess my compiler will think it's an object, but at runtime, right, who knows what it's going to be? You know, it could be a camera, but I won't know that unless I perform step 2. And once I perform step 2, then I know it's a camera. Then I can downcast it because I know this camera will have the same contents as a regular camera, and so I can access all the same fields, right? All the same methods and all the same what do you call them? Instance variables. So that is kind of why you're having to copy this signature, but you're downcasting because it's object, and the computer does not really know anything other than it being an object, and so object only is limited to so many methods and so many instance variables possibly. So actually, we could probably look here. So obj, these are the only things it knows, but yet camera knows a lot more than that, right? So if I called this dot, it has the same stuff object has because it extended from it, plus a lot of other methods and instance variables, right? Such as model, number of settings, and the brand. And that is why you need to downcast to this type of class, right? That's the third thing you need to do. And the fourth thing is to check if the contents of both objects are equal, return true. If they are, false otherwise. So really after this, you know that the objects not know that they're of the same type, and you've downcasted it. And after you've downcasted it, you can just check all of the contents, and if they're all good, then you just return true. I mean, there's a lot of ways, right? It could be, I mean, I don't know, like there's a possibility that there's a recursive equals, right? So this is equals, and what I mean by recursive is I have to call equals within it, and I had to do it here because I have this is an object, and this object has objects within it, and by objects I mean a string, and so I have to do the same thing, right? So I look at the brand, and then I say if brand equals this dot brand, if the object's brand equals this dot brand, then I'm good, right? Otherwise, let's return false. So that's it for this video. Hopefully this was helpful, and again, this is important for the exam if you're taking ComSci 228 at Iowa State University. So memorize these steps and know that you have to follow step 1 through 4 on an equals method, and you'll very likely be asked this in the exam, and they're very, very easy points to get. All right, thank you very much for watching this video, and have a good one.